We're waiting for the next batch of unsealed documents to drop relating to the accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Hundreds of pages were already released. That happened on Wednesday under a December 18th court order. They included deposition transcripts naming several prominent figures, including Prince Andrew and former presidents Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. CNN senior crime and justice correspondent Shimon Prokupecz is joining us now. A lot of people were waiting for these names to come out to see who was in his orbit. It doesn't necessarily mean that they did anything illegal, but it does tie them to Jeffrey Epstein, who is a fallen figure by all measures.
Right, that's correct. And it is important to note that none of these people that have been named have been accused of any kind of criminal activity or wrongdoing. These are not names that are necessarily new. We knew that we were expecting these names, of course, Sarah, but it sort of highlights just the relationship and sort of what Jeffrey Epstein, what his relationships were with these individuals. And for the first time, really, for years, people have been fighting to look at these documents. And now finally, we're getting our look at some of these documents and some of the new information.
Long-awaited documents finally released. The first batch of sealed court filings pertaining to the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein were made public Wednesday. The documents stem from a civil defamation lawsuit brought in 2015 against Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Prominent figures, including Prince Andrew and former presidents Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, included in a 2016 deposition of Johanna Schoberg, a former employee of Epstein. She says in the document that she and Epstein had a conversation, and quote, he said one time that Clinton likes them young, referring to girls. When asked if Clinton was a friend of Epstein's, she said she understood Epstein had, quote, dealings with Clinton. Clinton has not been accused of any crimes or wrongdoing related to Epstein and has denied any kind of criminal activity. But in 2019, he admits to having flown on Epstein's private plane, but knew nothing of the financier's, quote, terrible crimes. Schoberg also recalled a time she was with Epstein on one of his planes, and pilots said he needed to land in Atlantic City. Jeffrey said, great, we'll call up Trump and we'll go to, I don't recall the name of the casino, but we'll go to the casino. She says in the deposition she never gave a massage to Trump. This is the first reference to Donald Trump, but he is not accused of any wrongdoing.
Right now, the only person who has been prosecuted is a woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, who certainly, should be behind bars. But what's interesting in this, network of all these men who've been trafficking, young women and underage women for decades, and yet the only person that's been prosecuted, is a woman. There are many, many other people that, should be held accountable as well.
The documents also contain excerpts of depositions taken of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who previously reached an out-of-court settlement in her sexual abuse lawsuit against Prince Andrew. Giuffre alleged in her deposition that Maxwell directed her to have sexual contact with people including former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, Prince Andrew, and tech guru Marvin Minsky. Attorneys for Ghislaine Maxwell said in a statement on Wednesday she has consistently and vehemently maintained her innocence. This is the first set of documents to be unsealed under a December 18 court order, with more expected in the coming weeks. The documents are expected to include nearly 200 names, including some of Epstein's accusers, prominent business people, and politicians.
And so later today, we do expect to see more documents. Certainly at any point, the court will be releasing more documents. And this is expected, Sarah and John, to go on for days, perhaps, where we're going to be seeing more documents. There's thousands and thousands of records. I mean, this is a lawsuit that's been going on since 2015. And finally now, after years of fighting, we're getting to see what was in them.
And we should also mention that some of what happened in this case, he had so many people around him who were powerful, and there's a lot of questions about if that power played a role in how he was treated, even in the court system. Shimon,
right.
Great reporting. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, with us now is filmmaker Lisa Bryant, who directed the docuseries Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. Lisa, thank you so much for being with us. We saw you in Shimon's piece right there speaking with Caitlin Collins. You follow this case so closely. What's the most important thing that came out of this first batch of documents?
Well, I really think I haven't seen any real bombshells yet. I don't really expect to see them because we've seen snippets of this information come out through the years. But I really think the new revelations are going to illustrate the scale of Epstein's trafficking ring. How the power and influence among all these powerful people has allowed them to really continue to keep this under wraps, keep this information private, evade justice or prosecution. Of course, we know that just because their name might come out in these documents, it doesn't mean any, necessarily that there's any guilt. But there are some people that are guilty. Let's just face it, there will be. I think for the survivors and the attorneys who've been working so hard to bring this to light, I do think it gives them a sense of at least some satisfaction and some justice that we're keeping the conversation going, and hopefully those that have participated or helped facilitate in the sex trafficking might be looked at again. So it'll be interesting to see what details really are new, because there are some things that are new, but the names so far have not been surprising to me.
You've been speaking with survivors. How do they feel about this document release?
Well, I think there's some mixed emotions. I spoke to two who were featured in the documentaries that I was involved in last night, and both of them, do share that they're glad that there's attention, being focused on this, because there are so many people in this orbit, thousands of people over decades who, have been involved in some way or, denied knowing him. And now suddenly, there's going to be some accountability that, hey, guess what? Now you're mentioned in these depositions. But these depositions, for the victims, a lot of these women, they told their stories in depositions, hoping, to get some sort of, action taken against these people who abuse them, and nothing happened. So top line information they might have given us, in the documentary, and they told part of their story, but now part of them is, kind of upset that the full deposition is going to be out there with very intimate details of what happened to them and the sex trafficking and who they might have been trafficked to. So I think there's, they do want, to see this stay, in the limelight, so that hopefully, more people will be behind bars, besides Ghislaine Maxwell, who, is basically still denying, even though she's been convicted in a court of law, that she had anything to do with it, which is
so this
one of the
first
most interesting things.
Yeah, this first batch was about 40 pages, 40 documents. We expect up to 250. What specifically will you be laser focused on as these further documents are released?
I'm interested in anything that I haven't seen. I think some of these depositions I have been privy to just through different, court access or attorneys and whatnot. Again, I guess I'm looking to see if there's anything that's going to really put the focus, on particular individuals who've continued to deny that there was any involvement. There's little snippets of, President Clinton that, he likes them young. Does that mean anything? Those are little tidbits that I have not heard. I think the same Prince Andrew stories and all of that are, they'll become tiresome. Actually, let's focus on the David Copperfields and the people like that they have been mentioned. But let's face it, some of these people. Another point the survivors have made is, most of these people's names that are going to come out are going to be bankers, politicians, Hollywood types, and you know what? Are people going to keep supporting their lifestyle? Are they going to keep going to their movies? Are they going to keep banking with these people that have already been proven, involved in some way? It's not saying they had sex with these young girls, but it is proving that there was some, culpability when in fact they had been denying any involvement in the past. So, I think that's what's interesting is that, are people going to keep supporting these people and backing them and just, going to their movies and voting for them and, that kind of thing.